Hello, welcome to the Entrepreneur. My name is Joshua Yankovic, and joining me today is Ariell Suzanne, a professional freelancer. Ariell, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really well. It's a blessing every day to wake up.
I agree. hmm
So I wanted to not jump right into it too quickly, but let the listeners listen to you and talk a little bit about how we met. First of all, you came into the restaurant, and I don't remember like what exactly prompted me to talk to you, but maybe it was just asking what order you were there to pick up, and
Just started chatting, I think.
yeah, and found out that you happen to do freelance copywriting and freelancing in general.
hmm
And I thought that was so interesting. And I happened to say, like, I'm doing this podcast and I'd love to have you on. What was your take on all that?
I mean, great. I love talking on podcasts, so I like sharing my story. So it was just a great opportunity to be able to have, be able to share that. And since I'm also in the middle of moving at the moment too, my other thought was like, since I love the opportunity to go on podcasts, was in my mind thinking about how can I make this work to make sure that I can come see this person before I leave.
Very cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're from and like a little bit of a short background on you?
Sure. So I currently live in Kansas City. I've been here for about 9 years, but I'm not from here. I'm from the Northern Illinois, Chicago area. I've always had a huge love for the creative industries and the. Thank you.
Much better.
Can you hear me better?
Yes.
Good, good. So I've always had a love for the industries. I originally wanted to get into the fashion industry, but I wasn't exactly sure what that would look like. And I had an opportunity with a music manager years ago. And, I've done some recording in the studio and been a part of that process and just really, really loved it. But had to put all of my art dreams on the back burner. I had been out of the country for a little while in Africa. And then after I came back home, my parents also got divorced after 27 years, and my friends left, and or they moved on and got married, not really left. And so I decided to make a change. So I came to Kansas City and been here about 9 years, and been in. It's been a process.
What drew you to Kansas City?
It's kind of a long story, but the short version of it is it's a city that had been kind of on my grid for a few years. And when I was in Africa, I just was considering my next move when I came back, and Kansas City just made sense. And so I ended up coming here and then deciding once I got here that I was just gonna, make do with, like make the best of it. And because I like change and I enjoyed the move and just decided to stay.
Very cool. Now, how long have you been doing freelancing?
I started doing freelancing probably October of last year. So October 2019, I started as a freelance writer.
Wow, amazing. And so what prompted you to take that kind of action and that step towards doing something for your like working for yourself, doing something that you at least are good at, but also that you like?
Okay, so this is a little bit of a long story, but I think it's a good story. So I'll give
Yeah.
you more of the condensed version. So I have been in a million different fields, everything from advertising, management, medicine, retail, training, all kinds of stuff. That's just been the reality of the career world since I left high school, where I've just had to just kind of adjust as time went on. But every time I would get into these fields and I would make the most of it and learn what I can and adjust where I can, all the while I would exhaust my potential in these environments pretty quickly. And at the exact same time, I had both of my parents' voices in the back of my head that kept saying, you know, you've never enjoyed the thought of having one job and being somewhere 9 to 5. Like my mom would make this phrase, or say this statement. She'd be like, you should be a CEO of your own company. And then anytime I would think about that, I'd be like, CEO of my own company translated to I would have 200 employees and I would be stuck in an office and I would be stuck within a particular constraint. And that all of that just didn't seem exciting to me at all. Um, but my parents know me, so they know that if they wear on me over a period of time, like I will at some point start to listen to them. So as I'm going through this process of going from position to field, like doing my best in each one. And then, I was laid off twice by the time I was 31 years old. That possibility that my mother and my dad kept saying to me started to grow and started wondering, okay, what this would this look like? So fast forward to about 3 years ago, I found myself in a field that I literally never wanted to be in. I remember being in high school and being like, if there was one field that I could choose I could never be in, it would be this field. So
What field was that?
tax and accounting.
Gotcha.
No offense to anyone out there that's in tax and accounting, but
Just
it's just
not
not how
not
I'm
for
wired
you.
at all. No.
Nothing
So
nothing wrong with that.
nothing wrong with that at all. But because I'm a pretty loyal person and because I'm a really hard worker, I, put my really dove into it and did the best I could. I had decided by that point, obviously with all my experience in all these different fields, is that I might as well learn what I can while I'm here. So I did that for about 3 years. And then I was coming up on about 2.5 years. And last August, around my birthday, all summer, I had this one thought coming through my head, which was time is not a renewable resource. And I am at in a field I never wanted to work in, making money that is a renewable resource and giving them my time, which is not. And if I don't make a leap, regardless of whether or not I have all of my ducks in a row, I am I could potentially find myself here in another year, hating my job, wishing I had just left and made the leap and decided to do freelance and figure out what it would look like for quote unquote Ariel to be a CEO of her own company. Then, I'm going to end up regretting it. So that's really the backstory that, led me to January 6th of this past year. I left my day job and I launched out into freelance writing and just freelance in general, even though I don't have really, there's so much I don't have figured out. But to me, it was more the decision of I cannot justify any further not pursuing what it could potentially look like for me to be me, even if I don't exactly know what that looks like. Even though that was a turning point, another significant point is that after I left my day job on January 6th, you know, there's kind of a moment, right? Like you have all of this momentum of I'm going to make this huge leap of faith, and if we break down like what that actually looks like, there's like this running like excitement, exhilaration, like I'm going to get to that finish line, right? And then there's a moment where you jump and then all of a sudden it's like holy crap, what have I just done? Like I am now midair. I have no idea. I mean, I knew this before, like that whole fist in the air, like it feels so glamorous. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. But really, when you end up like jumping, it's like, but really, am I okay with this? Like, now it's the moment, And so because I had such an intense 2019, I not only had a very busy, work year last year, but I had a ton of different projects I was doing and little side gigs in the fashion industry and then in my side hustle and blogging and all kinds of stuff. So I was super busy. So when I left on January 6th, my body was like, all right, this is our moment that we've been waiting for. You're just going to rest. So I just plummeted. So my next moment of really realizing like that was kind of another check for me was when Kobe Bryant tragically died. That was another significant time. And I actually write about that in my blog about like, it helped to remind me that this leap of faith that I'm making is worth it because I believe we only do this once. We live only once. So, and this is our only opportunity. So I was glad that I took the time that I have. I made that decision for myself to do something for myself. So that was significant for me as well.
Wow. Yeah, I actually read some of, your blog about Kobe Bryant, and you're a very good writer.
Thank you.
And I wanted to ask you, like, what is your background with writing, or did you have any formal training?
No, I had no formal training. Actually, to be honest, like I used to write these like super flowery things like when I was younger. Like I remember some of my first like stories. Like I remember we had to like write a story for fourth grade and I'm all about adjectives and I'm all about details. So even just me starting my story was like, and there was like this person and all of the names started with K. So it was like Katie and Kirk and like I can't remember all of them. There was like five that I like my stock names that I would use, you know? And then she looked over in the distance and there was like a glisten in her eye. So I would write these like really flowery I loved adjectives and I loved description. I liked the emotion of a story. And then I would, get into it for a little bit and lose the entire like, wait, what is this story about? Because I would just get so excited about writing. But actually, uh, really the only time I really had outside feedback other than my family that said, "Hey, you're actually a really decent writer," was I had a college professor that ended up telling me like he would actually use my papers as examples for like good writing. And then he would also use my papers for like examples of, okay, if we played this game of, if I gave you $1,000 for every word that you got rid of, to help me with my wordiness, he's like, what would we do? So we would sit there and dissect it. So that's really it. And then from there, it was just a matter of passion. I just did it because I couldn't not.
I wanted to talk with you a little bit about like learning to love the process and trust it.
Mhm.
What is your take on how to get to that?
So I'm by no means an expert on how to get to that point at all. I think a lot of us aren't either, right? But
Right.
my 2 cents would be so again, going back to the beginning of this year as a recent example, kind of at the exact same time of me, jump midair after leaving my day job was I had kept having, repeating this phrase over and over, like trust the process, trust the process, trust the process, like trust your instincts, trust what it is that you've done, trust the decision that you've made. Like, I think one of the biggest things that this is because this particularly really helps me with the process is I tend to think macro level anyways. So I tend to take situations and then zoom out like the 30,000-foot view. And um I tend to think in terms of like, okay, so what would Ariell in 10 years think about your decision right now, right? And it's really interesting I think when we take that perspective because it forces us to really think about the big picture because when we're in the moment, that's all we're thinking about is the moment. We're thinking about like, oh my gosh, this sucks. I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. I still have student debt. I still have this, like get caught up in all those different details. When really, if I think from the perspective and from the eyes of, Ariel in 10 years, she would go, you're doing great. This is the best decision you could possibly make. You're not going to regret this. You're going to be so happy you did this. And Ariel, you know this. You even say this to other people is that it always works out. So trust it for yourself. So, that visualizing is actually a huge anchor for me in when I'm in the middle of the, hitting the fan in the middle of the process. I think back to, okay, what would she think though? Okay, we're back on track. She would be cool with this. She knows that, we know everything's going to be okay. She's going to be shouting from the mountaintops, so excited, like, sipping a martini, wherever the heck she is at that point, traveling the world, just so excited that you've made this decision and so proud of you. Like, and that's another phrase too, is that somebody had said that to me about like, Ariel, nobody is going to believe in you or take the risks for you more than you. So if anyone's going to make that decision and do it, it's going to have to be you. So do it for you. So it's really like, I think loving the process and trusting the process is a huge um, evidence. Is that the word I'm looking for? Huge part of actually loving who you are. So this is me actually saying, no, I'm doing this because I love me. So, because of that, since I think it's also a huge thing of self love, I also try and do a lot of self care as well too. So I do little spa things meaning like I give myself take a Epsom salt bath or something once a week, or like I purposely try and make sure I take time for myself. Or I love coffee shops, which is really tough right now, but I go get my journal and I get all those thoughts and stuff out of my head and I put those down. And then I also go to therapy. Like that's also really great. That's been a huge game changer for me. So I think those are some of the ways that helps me to help to love and to trust the process.
So you talk about self-love, and I think it goes hand in hand with self-awareness. What are some ways or some not processes, but some ways that you have found to help you be more self-aware?
Therapy.
Absolutely. I'm a huge advocate
Yeah,
as well.
huge advocate for therapy. I think yeah. Anyways, I won't start to say that, but therapy I think is great for people in general.
I think
Um,
there's a stigma behind it, and
Huge. Yeah, I love the fact that the stigma around therapy, I think, is really starting, especially the past 10 years, has really started to melt away.
it
But
really
even like
has.
it really has, even looking back at like old TV shows and stuff, like where they would make fun of therapy, it just was so much a part of our society of like there was just such a stigma to it. But
It reminds me of, I think people come from a place of fear and afraid to fail as well, so they don't wanna go. They
mhm,
don't think they should go, but, there's always room for improvement.
absolutely. And I'm a big believer in, if at some point we pay for everything. So, meaning like in this sort of a situation, if we don't if we don't, when you talked about like putting, spending the money on yourself, you know, to me, I feel like the money that I've spent in therapy will save me from having to pay for it in other ways,
Mm.
if things hit the fan later. Because at some point, I think we have been condition like created in such a way, or we're built in such a way, I should say, of where our bodies and our minds and we're meant to deal with it. So, I just believe that it's just really important to, you know, just deal with it now. Why not?
Absolutely,
Hmm.
because we all have things to work through, and
Sure do.
I knew that I had things from my childhood, I had things from my life that I had to, like, work through and get through, and in many ways, that was the, like, way that I did it.
Hmm.
So switching gears a little bit, well, we could touch on human connection. So as far as like, so self-awareness, I think also goes hand in hand with human connections. And you can't connect with other people if you're not connected to yourself on a deeper level. And so that's something that I recently, not recently, but recently as in the last 3 years, have come to like fully like understand, at least more so than I ever have before, which is human connections is everything. And if you can't develop relationships and develop those connections with another person, your whole life's just harder. Everything is more difficult. And so I wanted to get your take on the importance of human connections.
Yeah. So I am an extrovert. So I love human connections. Do you mean in terms of like the actual one-on-one relationship human connections, or like in terms of an entrepreneur sort of connections, or both?
So not so much a networking way, but a on a relationship basis, on a emotional basis. with other people and how important that is.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's so important, and that's another. I mean, kind of going back to self love is that in this process for me that I've been trying to figure out, like, the importance of human connection in my own life that has required, okay, this is also requires boundaries. Like these sort of people conversations, input is just not helpful for me or for, I think for the purpose of what I'd like to do with my life moving forward. So boundaries and finding my tribe has been really important. And when I say finding my tribe, like I feel like I've been on that process for so long. And because when it comes to life and it's constantly changing, like some people are only in our lives for, just a little bit. Some people are in our lives for years. Some people, they were in our lives for a while before and it was incredible and wonderful and they were our best friends. And then, life just doesn't move forward that way sometimes with some of those people. So I think recognizing the importance of different kinds of connections and the roles that they play in my life has also been important and not assume that all of them are going to be these long-term sort of relationships or not assume that they're all going to be small, just letting them be what they're going to be. Um, and then I think it's also just really important for allowing people that come into my life to feel safe to be whoever they are in my life.
It's like meeting them where they're at.
Meeting them completely where they're at, not putting any you know, definition on what they're supposed to be to me. They're just supposed to be them. So I'm hopefully, always trying to cultivate more and more what that looks like for people to be, themselves in my life. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Recently, I've kind of learned it wasn't a hard lesson, but it's a long time coming where I would be attracted to someone's potential instead of attracted to who they were, where they're at that moment. And I would think of like, oh, well, this, and this could be a thing. And I had to, and it was so strange. Like, I mean, I was just walking, and it just dawned on me suddenly where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, being attracted to a potential when that's not even real. It's
Mhm.
completely, it's irrational. And I thought it was really valuable. I was like, I need to tell someone. So I'm telling you now. And it's like being like able to recognize like there is no rhyme or reason to be attracted to a potential of something which is hypothetical. It's not real.
Mhm.
And meeting someone where they're at is is way more valuable and more important than thinking of something that's hypothetical.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that. Actually, like I have been in like for example, I remember dating someone, really incredible guy, but it was, just potential, and really getting to the end of that and being like, it this sucks to date potential. And then learning that lesson from there of like, okay, moving forward, not just in dating, but in real life, like, there's different ways to handle potential. For me personally, I don't think that it's a good idea to date potential. Um, when it's a friend or something like that, I think that there's different ways to, you know, help to support them in their active potential. But yeah, it's true. I feel like hopefully, if I'm hearing you correctly in what you're saying, yeah, I think there's this important thing that needs to be learned of, okay, so when I meet someone, this is how I am to be there for them and their active potential. This is the sort of caliber I'm supposed to have with them. Maybe I shouldn't date that, but maybe I can support them if that's what it's going to be. So,
Absolutely. And that is, you hit it right on the nail on the head because it's thinking of just a small like paradigm change, just a small mindset change for me was so significant, and it's going to change the rest of my life. Is going to be different now. The way I approach someone, the way I approach friend, relationship, whatever it is.
mhm.
So it's really fascinating. And it just, like I said, in the past 3 years, a lot has happened.
Mhm.
Um,
It's been a big 3 years, I hear that,
yeah.
just in
So
general.
yeah, I quit drinking in 2017 in August. So I'm just at 3 years
Mm.
now, and I've been sober for that time. And it's just steadily like it's like my real life started at that point, and that's when I began to grow. So it's just interesting. Like I still like every day I'm learning something new and continuing to progress further than I ever could have imagined.
Yeah, that's a cool process.
And I loved that you mentioned like the person 10 years from the you 10 years from now. If the me from 10 years from now would say something to me, he would say like, just do more, just do more stuff, just try more things and do more because you're on the path. Just do
Mhm,
more.
mhm.
So it really comes from a place of love.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know we just mentioned the you 10 years from now. So if you could speak to the past you, what would you tell them as far as like things not to do and to do in terms of seeking a career for yourself and seeking to be happy, even if it's not a career for yourself, but it's because I mean, not everyone's called to work for themselves. Some people are called to work for a company or a business or another
Mhm,
person.
mhm.
And that's what brings them joy and that's what brings them value. And that's really powerful. So for you though, what would you have done differently if you could go back?
My experience is that when it comes to real growth of character, like some of the most important lessons I've learned, it's only in hindsight I've been able to look back and be like, I'm so glad I didn't give up when things were so tough because not only did I get to the other side of it, but I also learned like the lesson of perseverance. And for me, in my experience, perseverance cannot really be learned in really any other way other than just persevering through stuff. And I think another thing I learned as well too is that when I've been in the middle of some really, really, really tough, very long, like, oh my goodness, will this ever end sort of seasons, is to, become better rather than bitter. So I really don't like it. I think it's tough for me to be able to say, like, you should have done this differently. Because again, I also try and remind myself that hindsight is 2020 typically. So it's really tough to be able to say, like, this right here is, this could have been done differently. Well, no, well, yeah, I can say that because I also know it happened. And I also know like the different things that went into that. So I think one of the things in terms of advice, I would say, like life is a journey and the dis- the path that life takes has definitely taken a much different path than what I thought. So trust that process. Just I think it's also just been a matter of learning to really see the value in the hard stuff and how that is actually and believing that instead of it, I think it's part of that mindset shift of, this right here is not, it doesn't have to break me. It can help to make me into who I'm becoming. So I'm going to let that happen. So, honestly, like I can think back to one particular decision that I made where I had this epiphany moment where I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And this feels so right. And it still does to this day. And quite honestly, in terms of therapy, that's the first thing we dealt with in therapy was this moment, this pivotal moment where I knew, okay, this is you. And then I got sidetracked by a relationship. But at the exact same time, I just don't feel like I can regret that person either. So I learned a lot from them. So, my life is what it is. And I just, I'm taking all of the pieces and trusting and believing in the process that some really, really cool things are going to be around the corner.
Yeah. It may not be the best way to word this, but I like to say like things don't happen really to you, they happen for you.
Mm.
Even even though like It's that paradigm shift when you see, like, not what is why is this happening to me, to what is this teaching me? So the same thing.
Mhm.
And so I completely agree. Like, I had to go through everything I went through. I had to suffer the way I did and see the beauty in what I did to understand where I'm at now and how far I've come. Because you can't see the mountaintop unless you've seen the valley.
Exactly.
There's always highs and lows.
Mhm. And our perspective shifts, like, as time goes on. Like, I guess I think about, a pivotal moment for me was, so I volunteered for Kansas City Fashion Week like a couple years ago, and I'd always wanted to work in the fashion industry, and that's originally what I wanted to go to school for and all kinds of stuff. And I just remember, you know, seeing the models walk the runway, and I had this moment where I was like, I could do that. But even though I still, like, as a 16-year-old, way back in the day, used to open up, the door to my bedroom and the door to my parents' bedroom, and we had wood floors, and I'd put on my heels and I'd like strut from one end of the house to the other. Like, there was always something that I thought would be super, super cool. And I loved the fashion stuff. But the difference was that I hadn't been through therapy at that point. I know we're talking about therapy a lot, but for me, that was really significant. So my perspective was different. So I think that's part of it too, is like also having grace for myself of like, okay, even if you had the opportunity to do runway modeling or some of the other stuff you wanted to do, like you really weren't ready for it. Like, you were afraid and you didn't think that you were, good enough to be able to do it. And you didn't have a support system. And, but now I do. And that's what matters. And going for it just matters.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's opportunities I could have pursued at the beginning, like 3 years ago, and when I first started getting into videography and photography and pursuing creativity as a profession. I could have taken more jobs, but I would not have done them well. I would not have been ready for them. I wasn't ready for them. And I had to go through that and understand that to say, okay, like, it is a process. It's from beginning to end.
Totally.
So I'm with you.
Unequivocally. Hmm.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with listeners who may be on the verge of changing their life for the better?
Hmm. Yes. So I want to talk about ready, what it means to be ready. I had, I tend to be a really, really intentional person, and I tend to overthink pretty much everything. And can be pretty thorough and pretty detail oriented. And, I years ago I was working in this one corporation, and I had this one leader that uh had just started to become my leader, a long, long, long story, but he started to become my leader, and he's like, he kept like pulling me aside to talk to me. And he's like, I still don't understand why you are in literally the lowest position that is within this company. He's like, when I first met you, I thought you were in one of the highest positions within this company because of how you carried yourself and because of the way that you interacted and that sort of thing. And he's like, what is holding you back? And I would talk about a bunch of different things, but he's like, you understand that you don't have to be ready. Like, that's not really a thing. And I think it was in that moment that I was like, wait, what? Of course it's a thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's an English word. It's part of our vocabulary. Of course it's a thing. And, that's not to say that, like, I don't want to make a huge general statement, but I think from my own experience, I think to the quote by Hugh Laurie, I wish I have it memorized, but it's one of my favorites. But where he basically just says, like, there's no such thing as ready. All there is right now. So right now is as good as time as any. So you might as well just go ahead and do it. And, that like really has marinated on me for the past 5 years or so, past 6 years of, there's no such thing as ready. Like, currently, right now, when I'm sitting here talking to you, what is literally going on in my life is we're sitting in the middle of 2020. I left my job January 6th from a corporate job into freelance that I'm still trying to figure out, like how that's all going to work, how that's all going to come together. Do I have all my T's crossed and my I's dotted? No. Would my grandma be a little bit nervous for some of this decision? Absolutely. That's why I don't tell her everything, but I did it because I knew that I could not give up any more of my time. I just could not justify it anymore. That was my personal decision. And for me also too, just to be honest, like I can handle a fair amount of risk. Like I'm okay with that. Some people aren't, and that's fine. For me, this is my process and what I ended up doing. And already in this year of leaping out into self-employment in the middle of a leap year, which I like to add, which I think is just super cool. Um, you know, I also, as of about a month ago, 2 months ago at this point, I decided that I'm just going to leave Kansas City. So I've been here for 9 years. I'm in the midst at this very moment selling almost everything that I own, 90% of my possessions, and I'm going to hit the road. I can do that now. I have a remote life. Even though I'm still building it, I am not going to sit around and wait anymore to try and figure out how that's all going to fit together. Sometimes I think that one of the ways that we figure out for our life to come together is we actually have to make some really big, bold moves. And again, I'm doing this for myself. So I'm going to spend the next year, maybe two, who the heck knows, like just traveling around the States. I will be blogging about it. So if anybody wants to follow me, you're more than welcome to. Please do.
What's your tag?
My blog and website is ariellsuzanne.com, ariellsuzanne.com. And you can also follow me on Instagram at ariellsuzabella. And then I'm also on Facebook. So, and my hashtag is Ariell Travels. So ARIELL Travels. So I think that would be the number one thing I would say. Time is not a renewable resource. Just do it. Like there's really not going to be any such thing as ready. So, yeah, honestly, I feel like almost if I could sit in front of anybody that is hearing the sound of my voice and just kind of look at you, like your life is worth it. Like your decisions that you make to be able to, make the big, bold move for your life it's worth it. And you might as well just go for it. And it is so interesting, the amount of support, the amount of enthusiastic, just the amount of enthusiastic support that comes out of big, bold moves. Like you're going to be just fine. And you're going to be so happy you did it. If it's the right move, whatever that move looks like, I think for people. So it doesn't have to look like mine.
Absolutely. Well, I really, really appreciate your time. And I'm really grateful to you for coming up and being on this episode of The Entrepreneur. And I will definitely stay connected and would love to hear more from you at a later date and see where you're at, down the road.
Yeah, please. That would be great. And, please keep in contact. And if anybody wants to follow me and see me on this journey, please do. And it's been an absolute honor to be here. So thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely.